Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Ramanaya. Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about the final verse, verse 11 of Śrī Aruṇācala Padigam. This verse is a continuation of what Bhagavan was saying in the previous verse. And just to remind you, what he said in the previous verse was, I have seen a wonder, the magnetic hill that forcibly seizes the soul or forcibly attracts the soul. And then in the next sentence, a very important sentence, as Bhagavan explains the efficacy of thinking of Aruṇācala, subduing the mischievous activity of the soul who thinks of it once, pulling it to be facing towards its unique self, making it to be motionless like itself. It will take that sweet soul as bali. Bali means food offered in sacrifice. Ikden means this is what, or what a wonder is this. And then he ends this verse by saying, souls be saved by thinking of the great Aruna Hill, this killer of the soul who shines in the heart. So what this verse is all about is about the efficacy of thinking of Aruṇācala. And if we think of Aruṇācala, Bhagavan assures us we'll be saved. When he said, be saved thinking of the great Aruna Hill, that implies we will be saved if we think of it. And how we are saved is it will kill us. It will destroy the soul. That is, it will annihilate ego. And this Aruṇācala, who appears outwardly in the form of the hill, is always shining in the heart as our own being. So that's the idea in the previous verse. So this verse is a continuation of that. What he says in this verse is, I'll first read the verse, Giriyadu Parama Karudiya Vembol Kettava Retane Kollo Viritua Rali Pire Penil Verevu Victida Virahu Karudiye Tireve Karutinul Orukal Karutina Kolamale Kollum Arumarun Dundrun Davanil Adutan Arunama Giriyana Arivir. What that means is, I'll just read the meaning and I'll go through it in more detail. Like me who consider this hill to be the supreme, how many are those who have been destroyed? You who are wandering about thinking of a means to give up the body, having given up desire for this life because of intense misery, there is on earth one thing, a rare medicine, that when thought of once within the mind will kill without killing. Know that it indeed is Aruna Hill. So that's the meaning. I'll now go through it sentence by sentence. He begins with a sentence of exclamation. Giriyadu Parama Karudiya Vembol Kettava Retane Kollo. Like me who considered this hill to be the supreme, how many are those who have been destroyed? Implying how many are those who are thereby being destroyed. So by thinking of this hill to be the supreme, so many have been destroyed is the implication. And the words Giriyadu Parama Karudiya Embol, these words can be interpreted in two ways. It can be like me who considered this hill to be the supreme, or like me who meditated upon this hill as the supreme. Very, very close meaning and complementary, but slightly different. Merely by considering this hill to be the supreme will thereby be destroyed, or if we meditate upon it as the supreme, considering it to be the supreme, it will be destroyed by it. So this is, here he's talking about thinking about the outward form of Aruṇācala, but as he explained in the previous verse, by thinking of the outward form of Aruṇācala, when he makes us think of his outward form, he starts a process from within our heart, slowly subduing the mischievous activity. That's the outward going mental activity of the soul, pulling it to be facing towards its unique self. That implies pulling it within to face itself, shining in the heart, making it motionless like itself, making it be motionless like itself. It will thereby, it will take that sweet soul as body. So this is how this thought of Aruṇācala works within the mind. And Bhagavan is talking from his own experience. Like me, how many are those who have been destroyed in this way by thinking of this hill as the supreme? In other words, how many have been consumed by Aruṇācala by thinking of it to be the supreme? And he also continues, this is the last verse of Patigam, but the day after he wrote this verse, he wrote the first 6 verses, or possibly all 8 verses of Ashtakam the next day. And he begins Ashtakam with a continuation of this same idea, talking about the efficacy of thinking of Aruṇācala from his own experience, just like he says here, Embo means like me. So he talks in the next verse of the first verse of Ashtakam, he talks directly about his own experience. So we'll be talking about that during the next meeting at the beginning of next month. Then in the next sentence, he addresses us, or addresses, that the tirivir means you who are wandering about. So he's addressing anyone who is seeking a means to put an end to this embodied life. So what he says in the next sentence is, Viri tuaralip peri penil virevu vitu udal victida viruhu karudie tirivir. That is, he's addressing us. He's saying, you who are wandering about, thinking of a means to give up the body, having given up desire for this life because of its immense or pervasive or expanding or increasing misery. So that is, as we go deeper and deeper in this spiritual path, it becomes more and more clear that the unsatisfactory nature of this embodied life. Because when we rise as ego and thereby identify ourselves with a body, we're imposing limitations upon ourselves. By imposing limitations upon ourselves, we seemingly separate ourselves from the infinite happiness that we actually are. So anything less than that infinite happiness is, by comparison, it's misery. So that's what Bhagavan's talking about here. That is, here he uses a Tamil word for misery, tua, that means misery, but the Sanskrit equivalent is dukkha. Dukkha and sukha, that is, sukha means happiness, dukkha means unhappiness. But we can also interpret them to mean sukha means satisfaction, dukkha means dissatisfaction. That is, our real nature is infinite satisfaction. We're infinitely happy as we actually are. But when we limit ourselves as ego, thereby separating ourselves from that infinite satisfaction or happiness that we really are, we are dissatisfied. And dissatisfaction is the very nature of ego. As ego, we can never be satisfied. We're always seeking satisfaction in one thing or another. When we get what we want, we experience satisfaction very briefly. And then we want something more and we want something more, because nothing can really satisfy us other than the infinite happiness that we actually are, the infinite satisfaction that we actually are. So embodied existence is miserable. So that's what Bhagavan is referring to here. You who are wandering about, thinking of a means to give up the body. Giving up the body doesn't just mean committing suicide. That's not what Bhagavan's referring to here, because merely if we kill this body, so long as ego lives, we'll continue projecting one body after another. So when he talks about a means to give up the body, he's implying a means to give up embodied existence. And the means to give up this samsara. So long as we write, and he defines samsara in verse 24 of Ulladu as ego. Ego itself is samsara. That is, ego is the root of samsara, and therefore it itself is samsara. So long as we rise as ego, we project and experience ourselves as a body. So merely killing this present body isn't a solution, because so long as the dreamer survives, the dreaming will continue. So by killing this body, we'd be putting an end to this dream, but another dream will begin. So when he talks about thinking of a means to give up the body, what he implies is a means to give up embodied existence, having given up desire for this life because of its immense misery. So that's the first half of the sentence. He's addressing us. Then the main part of the sentence is Harutinul Orukal Karidia Kolamale Kollum Aru Marundu Ondru Undu Avaniel. That means there is on earth. Avaniel means on earth. Undu, there is. There is on earth, Ondru, one thing. That implies one means to give up the body. And what is that one thing? Aru Marundu. It's a rare medicine, or a rare or a preeminent medicine. What does this medicine do? Karitinul Orukal Karidida Kolamale Kolum. That, when thought of, will kill without killing. When thought of within the mind, will kill without killing. What's he mean by kill without killing? He means it will kill ego without killing us. That is, what we really are can never be killed because it's eternal. What will be killed is ego, and what will remain is our eternal being, the infinite happiness that we actually are. So it's a beautiful expression, kolamale kolom, killing without killing. And how will it, when will it kill us without killing? When we think of it even once in the mind. That is, when we think of Aruṇācala even once within the mind, the process that he described in the previous verse, the process of Aruṇācala subduing the outward going activity of the mind, pulling the mind inward to face itself, thereby making it motionless like itself, and then feeding upon it, taking it as bali, as sacrificial offering. This process is started by us thinking of Aruṇācala even once within the mind. And if we think of it, that is, this process will start and it will end with Aruṇācala killing us without killing. That is, killing ego without killing what we actually are. Because what we actually are is eternal and can never be destroyed. So what is this rare medicine he's talking about? He says in the next sentence, Adutan Arunama Madiram Arivir. Know that itself, that indeed is Aruna Madiram. Know that it is Aruna Hill. So that's the conclusion of this. So he ends with a very firm assurance that if we think of Aruṇācala within the mind, it will start this process that will end in it killing us without killing. And as I said, he continues this same idea in the next verse, the first verse of Aruṇācala, in which he says that though it stands as if an insentient hill, its action is wonderful and cannot be understood. So when he says it stands as if an insentient hill, I mean, though to outward appearances it seems to be an insentient hill, what it actually is that supreme power of grace, which is always working in our heart. And then he says how from before he knew any other thing, Aruṇācala was shining in his mind as Mihaperudu, as what is exceedingly great. But even when he came to know that it was from someone that it was Tiruvannamalai, he still didn't know its significance, its meaning, its reality, what it actually is. But how he came to know what it actually is, he describes in the last sentence of the first verse of Ashtakam. He says, Arivine marul urutu aruhinileka aruhurum amayam idu achala makandein. Arivine means awareness, but in this context it means mind. Marul urutu, that means enchanting the mind, and aruhinileka, pulling close. What that implies is when it enchanted and pulled the mind close, at that auspicious time, he saw Idu Achala Makandein. I saw as this is Achalam. This can be interpreted in two ways. Achalam can mean a hill. It can also mean what is motionless. Many people take it to mean that he saw it as a hill. But when we consider it in the light of the last two verses of Aruṇācala Padigam, it's very clear but what he's actually talking about. When he talks about enchanting the mind and pulling it close, he's talking about pulling the mind within. And then he saw what it actually is, which is Achalam. So it fits perfectly with what he says in verse 10, but it pulls the mind within to face itself and thereby makes it motionless like itself. So that's what he implies in the next verse. But I'll talk about that in more detail at our first meeting next month. So coming back to the previous sentence, the second last sentence, where he refers to Aruṇācala as a medicine. He refers to Aruṇācala as a medicine in many places. For example, in verse 8 of Patigam, he says, Paitiam patri payanoru menakun padamurum arumarundu arulvai. That means, to me who, being possessed by madness and bereft of fruit, graciously give the rare medicine by which to reach your feet. When he says to me who madness possessing, the madness he's referring to is the madness of love for Aruṇācala. So he's mad with love for Aruṇācala, but he's bereft of the fruit. That is, the fruit of that madness is jnana. So he has that bhakti, but he doesn't have the jnana. As he's in Aksharam, there's one verse where he says, Jnana miladun asayal talavara jnanam teritara Aruṇācala. Jnana miladun asay. I'm suffering under this desire for you without the jnana. So graciously bestow the jnana upon me. So this is the madness he's talking about. He's mad with love for Aruṇācala, but devoid of the jnana, which is the fruit of that madness. So he prays, graciously give the Aru Marundu, the same word he uses in Aru means what is rare or what is preeminent. So he uses the same term, Aru Marundu. Marundu is medicine, in verse 8 and also in this final verse 11. So graciously give the rare medicine, namely implying jnana, by which to reach your feet. So there he talks about medicine. He also talks about medicine in a couple of verses in Aksharamlai. In verse 66 of Aksharamlai, Pittu Vittunene Pittana Kineyarul Pittan Delimaran Aruṇācala. That means Aruṇācala, removing my madness of desire. So I'll read just the basic meaning and I'll explain this. Aruṇācala, removing my madness, you made me mad to attain you. Graciously give me the medicine to clear this madness. So what he implies by that is, when he says removing madness, he's talking about the madness of desire for the world, the madness of desire and attachment for the petty pleasures of mind, body, and world. So that though we know this mind, body, and world are constantly causing us to suffer because of dissatisfaction, we are still mad after the petty pleasures we think we can gain from this embodied existence. So Bhagavan says, removing that madness, you made me mad to attain you. That implies madness with desire to attain you or love to attain you. So yeah, then he says, so you've used one madness to get rid of another madness. Now you give me the medicine, implying the medicine of jnana, to clear this madness of desire for you. Because why he describes desire for Aruṇācala as madness? Because Aruṇācala is always what we actually are. But so long as we rise as ego, we seem to be separate from Aruṇācala. So we are mad with desire. This madness of desire will come to an end only when we are made to see that Aruṇācala is what we always actually are. Then this desire will dissolve into the infinite love that is Aruṇācala, as Bhagavan implies in another verse, in verse 101 of Aksharamlai. He says, Ambuvilali pol amburuvanilene anbai karitaral Aruṇācala. Like ice in water, melt me as love in you, the form of love. So long as we experience Aruṇācala as something other than ourselves, that love takes the form of desire, because it's for something other than ourselves. But when he bestows upon us the medicine to clear this madness, the medicine of jnana, clears this madness, then that desire becomes the infinite ocean of love, which is Aruṇācala himself. So this is one verse in Aksharamlai where he uses the term marundu. And as in verse 8 of Patigam, he's talking about medicine for madness. And then also in verse 76, Male marundidani malitidavo arul male marundayole Aruṇācala. He addresses Aruṇācala as arul male marundai ole Aruṇācala. That means Aruṇācala who shine as the grace hill medicine. That implies the medicine of grace in the form of a hill. So Aruṇācala who shine as the grace hill medicine. Then the first part of the verse is a question. Male marundu ida ni male tidavo. Do you hesitate to give me the medicine for confusion? The medicine for confusion means the confusion is the confusion of ajnana. So when you're the hill of medicine, why are you, he doesn't say why, he says do you, but it implies, why do you hesitate to give me this for medicine to remove this ajnana? When you're the hill of medicine itself, why do you hesitate to give me this medicine? So this is Bhagavan often referring to Aruṇācala as the Malay Marandu, the hill of medicine. And in this, he says very explicitly, Arul Malay, the hill of grace, medicine in the form of a hill of grace. Aruṇācala shines as medicine in the form of a hill of grace. So these themes are, the same themes are repeating themselves through so many verses in Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam. But the main point is that what is our aim? Our aim is to give up this embodied existence, and we can give up this embodied existence only when, by his grace, he kills us without killing. He kills ego without killing what we actually are. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Ramanaya.
So there is a question. Many devotees understand intellectually that they should surrender their will, but in daily life, at work, in relationships, during illness, they feel confused about what exactly to surrender and what requires their attention. Could you give practical guidance on how to distinguish between surrendering outcomes versus being negligent about necessary actions? Thank you.
Whatever actions are necessary, we will be made to do. As Bhagavan implied in the first sentence he wrote, of the note he wrote to his mother, Avarava prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angangirindu artuvipan. That means in accordance with the prarabdha of each one, he who is for that, implying God or Guru, angangirindu, being there, being in each place, implying being in the heart of each one of us, Artuvipan will make, Artuvipan literally means will cause the dance. So he will make us do whatever is necessary. That doesn't mean all the actions we do are actions that he makes us do, because we have the freedom to, we have the freedom to, we have what he called Ichya-Swatantra, which is freedom of will. We're free to want whatever we want. And we also have Kriya-Swatantra, freedom of action. So we are free to want things, we're free to try to achieve them, but we are not free to achieve anything that is not in prarabdha, as he makes clear in the next two sentences. In the second sentence, he says, Endrum naduvadadu, envichikanum naduvadu. That means what is never to happen will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. When he says envichikanum, in spite of any amount of effort, that implies we can try to experience what is not in prarabdha. And why do we try? Because we want to. So that implies both the Ichya-Swatantra and the Kriya-Swatantra. We have that freedom of will and the freedom of action. So we can try, but we cannot experience anything that is not destined to happen. So no matter how much you may want to experience something and try to experience it, we cannot experience it unless it is destined to happen. So that he makes very clear. Then in the next sentence he says, Nadupadu entade seinum niladu. What is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstruction. So there's so many things we undergo in life that we don't like, and we may try to avoid them. We are free to dislike them. We are free to consequently try to avoid them, but we cannot avoid them. They will not stop in spite of any amount of effort to try to obstruct them or to stop them. Iduve tinam, this is certain. Ahalin monamai irke nandru. Therefore, being silent is good. What's he mean by being silent? What he means is not rising as ego with desires for this or that. That is what is going to happen is going to happen. What we need to do will be made to do. He says the same in the 13th paragraph of Nana, when that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas. All karyas in that context implies everything that is meant to happen, he will make it happen. Everything that we're meant to do, he will make us do. When such is the case, why should we, instead of yielding ourselves to it, be constantly thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? So we don't have to worry about what we should do. That whatever we should do, he will make us do. What we have to what we have to concern ourselves with is subsiding back within, giving up our likes and dislikes and subsiding back within. That should be our only concern. When there's a very nice story that illustrates this. That is, Bhagavan's younger brother, Chinnaswami, was the manager of the ashram. He had a great desire to build a temple for his mother. So the temple construction was going on, but often, the ashram wasn't at all a wealthy institution. Now it's a relatively well-established institution, but it wasn't like that in those days. In the 1930s and 40s, they were living hand to mouth. What came each day was what was spent. So often the day would start and there wouldn't be enough money to pay the wages for the stonemasons who were building the temple. But somehow every day the money would come and he would manage to pay it. But he faced so many problems. And he also faced a lot of opposition. A lot of devotees were thinking, why money is being wasted on building this temple? It would be better some people said it's better if we buy land and then we can cultivate paddy and then we can feed the devotees who come here. So everyone, always when you have an institution, you'll get so many different opinions. So Chinnaswami was facing so many problems, financial problems, problems of people opposing his ideas, and all sorts of problems he was facing. And whenever the problems became too much for him to bear, he was terrified of Bhagavan, so he wouldn't go to Bhagavan directly, but he would send someone to Bhagavan to plead on his behalf to Bhagavan. So one day when he was facing so many problems, he sent someone to Bhagavan to tell about all these problems. And that person went and told Bhagavan, Chinnaswami is facing so many difficulties now. And he listed all the difficulties he was facing. Bhagavan listened. And since he was small, Chinnaswami's name, his pet name in the family was Pichan. So Bhagavan said, tell Pichan, he has only one responsibility, that is to keep his mind calm. Let the temple be built, let it not be built. Let money come, let money not come. Let the ashram continue running, let the ashram close down. Nothing matters. The only responsibility he has is to keep his mind calm. So this is the essence of Bhagavan's teaching. And how do we keep the mind calm? We keep the mind calm by turning our attention within and thereby subsiding back into the heart. That is what he implied in that note to his mother when he ended saying, Ahalin monamai irake nandru. Therefore, being silent is good. Being silent means not rising as ego. And to avoid rising as ego, we need to turn our attention back within. So that should be our only concern. We don't have to worry about what we need to do or what we don't need to do, because what we need to do will be made to do anyway, in accordance with our prarabdha. So I hope that's a clear answer to that question. If we may think we have so many responsibilities, we've got a family to take care of, we've got bills to pay, we've got work in the office, we've got responsibility to our managers, to our employers, there's so many responsibilities and everything. We may feel, how am I going to do all these things? I have to be struggling to do all these things. If we surrender, if we leave it all to Bhagavan, whatever we need to do, he will make us do. Whether we surrender or not, he's going to make us do anyway, so we need not worry about it. All we need to concern ourselves with is surrendering ourselves to him. And in order to surrender our will, to some extent, we can surrender our will without turning within. We can surrender our will by thinking of his kindness and his love and thinking he's taking care of everything. And slowly, slowly, we can reduce the intensity of our likes and dislikes and train our mind to be more inclined to rely upon his grace and not to worry about everything. We can do this to a certain extent. But so long as we continue to rise as ego, we will inevitably have likes and dislikes, desires and attachment to a greater or lesser extent. It's unrealistic to think that we can ever give up all our desires without giving up ego, because the very nature of ego is to have desire. So we can and we must try to reduce the strength and intensity of our likes and dislikes and desires and attachments and so on. But if we want to give them up entirely, there is only one way, and that is to give up ego. That is why surrender begins with trying to surrender our will as much as we can. And that's good and that's absolutely necessary. But the surrender cannot be complete without surrendering ourself. That's why it's called Atma-samarpanam, surrender of oneself. Oneself means ego. So we have to surrender this ego, because so long as we rise as ego, we will inevitably be having likes and dislikes and desires and attachment and hopes and fears and so on. This is inevitable. We cannot avoid this. The only way to avoid it is to cut the root of this tree of desire. The root is ego. Because whose desires are they? Whose likes are they? Whose dislikes are they? Whose hopes are they? Whose fears are they? They're my fears, my likes, my dislikes. So only by killing this me, this ego who has all these likes and dislikes, can we really be free of desire. So surrender cannot be complete without surrender of ego. And the means to surrender ego is to turn our attention within. Because to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we thereby subside. So that is the implication when Bhagavan wrote to his mother, therefore being silent is good. We need to turn our attention within and thereby subside back within the heart. What is meant to happen is going to happen anyway. We need not worry about that. He will take care of it all. Our only responsibility is to surrender ourselves to him.
The next question, Michael. I practice self-inquiry every day, but trying to understand, what does attaining I mean? Thank you.
I is this term we find in many English books. I is actually a mistranslation. The term Bhagavan used in Tamil was nan, or in Sanskrit, aham. Though if translated literally, it is I, but we need to understand how these languages work. That is, both Tamil and Sanskrit, they are, it is not necessary when you say a sentence, if you say A is B, you don't have to say is, you say A, B, and the is understood. So if, for example, in Tamil, if I say nan idu, that means I this, but we never write it as I hyphen this. When we translate it into English, it means I am this. Nan means I who. but we don't write it as I-who. The am is understood there. So na means I am who, or who am I? But for some reason, someone started translating nan as, which what Bhagavan meant by nan is I am I. Someone started translating it as I-I, and everyone has followed suit. There's a portion in talks where this is very clearly seen, but it's most people don't recognize it there. There's a place where Bhagavan says something, I can't remember the exact passage, but it's something Bhagavan says, what's written in talks is I is the reality. When it goes off as a tangent, as I am this or I am that, it is ego. What Bhagavan would have said there, nan, but he didn't mean I-I. He meant I am I is the reality. That is what we actually are is I. So wherever we find in English books I-I, it means I am I. So what is the significance of this term? Bhagavan uses this term in many places. For example, in verse 30 of Ulladu, verse 20 of Upadesha Undiyya, and I think in verse 2 of Atma-vichara, what all these verses have in common is he's talking about the annihilation of ego. Basically what he's saying is, when ego dies, one thing shines forth as I am I. That is, ego is the false awareness, I am this body. When that dies, the reality shines forth as I am I. What does I am I mean? It means what we actually are is nothing other than ourselves. As he says in Aksharamlai, Tane tattavamidane tane kartavaya Aruṇācala. That can be, we can take tane. It has two meanings in that context. It can either be tane means oneself alone is oneself. Tane tattavamidane. This is tane tattvam. Oneself is the reality. That's one way of taking it. Or we can take it as tane repeated for emphasis. Tane tattvam. Oneself alone is the reality. Idane tane kartavaya Aruṇācala. You yourself reveal this to me. So the point is that what we actually are is nothing other than ourselves. So to identify ourselves with this or that is always a false identity. If our identity is to be expressed in words, it can only be accurately expressed as I am I. This is what I sometimes refer to as the Ramana Mahavakya. That is, the Mahavakyas are the statements in the Upanishads that clearly indicate our identity with Brahman. That is, what we actually are is nothing but Brahman. Tattvamasi, that you are. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Prajnanam Brahman, this awareness is Brahman. I am Atma Brahman, this very self is Brahman. So all these are revealing that what we actually are is nothing other than Brahman. Jiva Brahmaikya, the oneness of Jiva and Brahman. That is, Brahman is the underlying reality of Jiva. So, but even to say I am Brahman is not quite correct. That it's correct, but there's a more refined way of saying it, because so long as we do not know what we actually are, when we talk about Brahman, it's just an idea. We don't know Brahman. We cannot know Brahman without knowing ourselves. So long as we talk about Brahman, we have a certain idea. Brahman is something vast, it's infinite, it's Satchidananda, pure being, pure awareness, pure happiness. All these, for us, these are ideas. It's not our experience. We are not experiencing Brahman so long as we rise as ego, because ego is what covers over Brahman. What Brahman actually is I am. So I am Brahman is correct, but if we meditate I am Brahman, we're meditating on a certain idea that we have about Brahman, rather than what Brahman actually is. So when we actually experience ourselves as we actually are, we will not experience ourselves as I am Brahman. What we will experience is I am I. I'm nothing other than I. So this term that Bhagavan uses, nan nan or aham aham, it has a very, very deep significance in Bhagavan's teachings. But that significance is lost when it's mistranslated as I-I. That is what is our true identity. Our true identity is not I am this body. Our true identity is not even I am that Brahman. Our true identity is I am I. Because that Brahman that is referred to is nothing other than I. So if we understand that Brahman is I, we can forget about Brahman. We should meditate only on I. And what we will find if we meditate only on I is who am I? I am I. I'm nothing other than I. So this is a hugely significant term in Bhagavan's teachings, but it's been lost in translation, unfortunately. Because I was focusing on this term I've now forgotten what exactly the question was. Can you, Shani, do you mind repeating the question to see whether
Yes,
I've answered it or not?
yes. The question is, I practice self-inquiry every day, trying to understand what does attaining I mean?
Okay, attaining I means experiencing ourself as ourself alone. Now we experience ourselves as something other than ourselves, this body. We mistake this body to be ourselves. But what we actually are is nothing other than I. So but the more we turn our attention within, the more clearly we experience ourselves as something distinct from the body. We still haven't experienced that with full clarity. That's why we still mistake ourselves to the body. But it becomes, the more we attend to ourselves, the clearer it becomes that we are something distinct from this body. Though it's not fully clear yet, we see it more and more clearly. This clarity of self-awareness that we experience by turning our attention within is what Bhagavan referred to as spurana. Spurana means literally it means to shine or to be clear. So that clarity that we get, the clarity of self-awareness that we experience, to the extent to which we turn our attention within, is spurana. So spurana is not just a thing that we experience. So spurana is a quality of experience. So the more we attend to ourselves, the more clearly we experience ourselves as ourself alone. That's why Bhagavan often referred to what he called spurana. He referred to it as the spurana I am I. But unfortunately, it's been mistranslated in English as the spurana I. And then people say it's I is vibrating, I is flashing or whatever. Spurana has many different meanings because anything that makes itself clearly known is a spurana. So the beating of your heart, if you feel your pulse, that's a spurana. If you see a bright light, that's a spurana. Anything that shines in the sense of makes itself known is spurana. But Bhagavan is talking about the aham spurana, the clarity of I. So it's the clear awareness of what we actually are. It's not a vibration, it's not a palpitation, it's not, but these are all objective phenomena. I is not an object, I is the subject. And what I actually is not even the subject, but the reality of the subject. So that clarity of self-awareness is what Bhagavan referred to as the spurana I am I. We experience that to varying degrees, depending on how deep we go in the practice of self-attentiveness. That the more we attend to ourselves, the more clearly we experience ourselves as something distinct from all these phenomena that appear and disappear. When that clarity becomes full, that is the door, that is jnana, that is what swallows ego. So if you're practicing self investigation, if you're practicing Atma-vichara, that means if you're attending to yourself as much as you can throughout the day, that will certainly lead, well, I mean, even while practicing it, to the extent we practice it, to that extent, we experience this clarity called sparana. And when that clarity becomes full, that is the annihilation of ego, and that's what Bhagavan refers to as he says, but one infinite whole, the purna, will in the Sanskrit version of verse 20 of Upadeshasaram, he says, Parama Purna Sat. Parama means supreme, ultimate. Purna means what is full. Sat means being. It is the full, perfect, infinite being. That is what Bhagavan refers to as I am I. It's that clarity of knowing ourselves as ourself alone.
The next question, Michael.
Mm.
My question is about preparation for physical death. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, the Lord says, "Think of me at the time of death." But any thought is a movement away from our motionless being. If we know that death is close, but are still identified with the body, do we try and remain as the motionless Arunachala within us, or do we follow the thought of Arunachala? Thank you.
Krishna says, think of me at the time of death. But Krishna, what does Krishna say he is? In chapter 10, verse 20, he says, Ahamatma Gudakesha. I am the Atman in the heart of every living being. So Krishna is not something other than ourselves. Krishna is our own reality. He is what we actually are. That's why if we read through the Bhagavad Gita, in so many verses, he's emphasizing we should be meditating on ourselves. In chapter 6, he talks about this a lot. In verse 25 of chapter 6, he says, the second half of the verse is Atma samstam mana kritva na kinchit api chintayat. Make your mind fixed on yourself. Do not think of anything else whatsoever. So when Krishna says, there are two ways. When Krishna says, think of me, he can either mean think of my external form or think of what I actually am, which is what is shining in your heart as I. Just like in Stuti Panchakam, Bhagavan is so often, he's clearly talking about the external form of Arunachala, but he's equally clearly talking about what is shining in the heart. He says, this great Arunagiri who is shining in the heart. Be saved by thinking of this great Arunagiri who shines in the heart as the killer of the soul. What is it? The verse that is, he ends, O tu minnuikal, O souls be saved. Ulamadilloriv, this be saved by thinking of this great Arunagiri who shines in the heart as the killer of the soul. So, according to that is thinking of the external form is good. Thinking of the external form of Arunachala or Bhagavan or of Krishna or Rama or any form of God, it is good. But better than that is to recognize that he's what's shining in the heart. This is what Bhagavan talks about in verse 8 of Upadesha Undiya. He says, rather than Anya Bhava, Ananya Bhava is best among all. Anya Bhava means, Anya means what is other. So if we meditate on the name or form of Krishna or Arunachala or Bhagavan, that is Anya Bhava. Because that name and form is something other than ourselves. But better than that is the Ananya Bhava in which he is I. So recognizing that that Krishna who appeared outwardly in the form of Krishna to teach the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, that Krishna is what is shining in our heart as I. Just like Arunachala is what is shining in our heart as I. Bhagavan Ramana is what is shining in our heart as I. It's all one. But that is, the external forms are many, but the internal reality is one. And that internal reality is I. So he's always, whatever name and form of God you may think, you may be attracted to, the reality of that name and form is what is always shining in the heart as I. So what should we think of at the time of death? What we think of at the time of death is determined by what we think of during our life. If we spend all our life thinking about worldly pleasures, worldly possessions, wealth, name, fame, all these things, at the time that we are separated from the body, even if we try to think about God, that thought of God, there'll be no room for that thought of God, because we'll be thinking about all our everything that we have desire and attachment for. So if we want to think about God at the time of death, we need to start thinking about God here and now. But rather than thinking about God as a name and form, better still to think of him as our own reality, as what is shining in our heart as I. Both are good, but Bhagavan makes it very, very clear. The Ananya Bhava is best among all. Rather than the Anya Bhava, the Ananya Bhava is best among all. And that's another thing in Gita. Krishna often talks about Ananya Bhakti. There are two ways of interpreting Ananya Bhakti. Ananya Bhakti means love for not another. If you're on the path of devotion to the name and form, and Ananya Bhakti means thinking of Krishna alone, not thinking of anyone else, no other God, no other person, think of Krishna alone. That's one way of taking it. But another deeper way of taking Ananya Bhakti is having love for Krishna, not as something other than oneself, but as oneself alone. So what Krishna taught in Gita, that is, as in all the Prasthana Traya, the original texts of Vedanta, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, and the Bhagavad Gita, in all these texts, there's room to interpret it in different ways. And that is deliberate, because different people have different stages of our spiritual development. We have different needs. The majority of people will not be attracted to this path of Advaita. To them, it seems something very dry and very, no, I want only to worship my beloved Krishna, my beloved Rama, my beloved Bhagavan. I don't want all this talk about Advaita and everything. Some people, they're just not ready for that. For such people, they can find lots of support for their beliefs in the Upanishads, in the Brahma Sutra and the Bhagavad Gita. But those who have gone deeper in this spiritual path and are drawn to the Advaita, there's lots of support also for Advaita. So these texts are intended to be, they're multi-layered texts. They have many different layers of meaning. And the meaning that strikes us is according to our pakva, our level of maturity. So if someone says no, when Krishna says think of me, he means only think of Krishna, don't think of any other gods, only think of Krishna. For them, that's right. But for the deeper meaning is, when he says think of me, he means think of me as Atma, as your own self. Because he is Ananya, he's not anything other than ourself.
The next question, Michael.
Yeah.
In In my sadhana, the more I practice to quieten the mind, the more I lose my grip on the competent world. How do I handle this conflict, please?
We need not worry about losing our grip on the world, because what is going to happen in our life, it's already predetermined. As I was saying earlier, the prarabdha has already been ordained. What we need to do in accordance with our prarabdha, we will be made to do that. So we need not worry about these things. The only thing, if we are wise, the only thing we should be concerned about is holding on to Bhagavan in our heart. He will take care of everything else. Krishna says in Gita, if you surrender to me, I will take care of your yoga kshemam. Yoga means all the things you want to acquire. Kshema means all the things you've acquired and you need to keep. He'll take care of everything. Whatever you need, he will provide. Whatever you need to keep, he will preserve it for you. So we don't have to worry about our material needs. We don't even have to worry about our spiritual needs. Surrender to him, he will bestow that moksha upon us. But we need to surrender to him. That surrender is absolutely, it's essential. Without surrender, we are lost in samsara. He alone can save us. And how to surrender? By holding on to him in our heart, where he's ever shining as eye.
Okay. The next question, as Michael was speaking about Arunachala and its ability to draw us into stillness, I was reminded that in Christian life, sacramentals serve similar purposes. In other words, an object can be imbued with spiritual grace and can then transfer this grace to those who venerate it. In our apparent embodied lives, the presence of an appropriate sacramental can serve to draw us to the reality behind it, as it were.
Yes, but we always, that is, these external things, they all serve a purpose. But the purpose they serve is drawing us to the reality which is ever shining in our heart. So that if we want to go deep in the spiritual path, we need to recognize that. But ultimately, the external things, they are there as supports. But what is really essential is turning within. So long as our mind comes out, we need the external support. But we shouldn't be just relying on the external support without trying to turn our attention within. The external support is to help us to turn our attention within. And you mentioned Christianity. Christ says the same thing. He says, they'll say, look here, look there. But I say, look, see. Lo, behold. Lo, behold means look, see. Look, see, the kingdom of God is within you. He doesn't just say it as a statement of fact, the kingdom of God is within you. He says, look, see. So we need to look within how can we see the kingdom of God within if we don't look within to see it? So we need to look within. So ultimately, whatever way we go, looking within we have to come to looking within. That is the as Bhagavan says in the final verse of Aruṇācala, we have to go back the way we came. That means we've risen from the heart, we have to go back to the heart. We have to turn back within.
The next question. When I listen to bhakti in the form of music, whether it be kirtans or songs devoted to Ramana, I feel moved somewhat, but I still sense doership and a performer in the expression. Ramana gave us prose and beautiful poetry that arose from silence. My question is, what would music sound like today if expressed directly from silence, And how would it be distinctively different to prose?
Well, I mean, in India, there's so much, in all the Indian languages, there's so much devotional poetry. And that devotional poetry often, I mean, usually poetry is uh, is suitable to sing, either to chant or a lot of poetry is particularly designed for singing. So um, the the deepest of all the bhakti songs have arisen from silence. From where else can they arise? So they have arisen from silence, and their aim is to draw us back into silence. Silence is the beginning and the end. I mean, we've all arisen from silence. We all have to return to silence. And the way to return to silence is by silence. So that devotional music should, if we go deep in it, it should turn our attention back within so that we subside back into the silence from which we've risen and from which everything else has risen.
The next question. If the individual jiva is an illusionary agent, who or what is it that has ichcha kriya swatantra, freedom of action? If we accept that the individual jiva is an illusion, that all actions are predestined, and that Brahman alone is real, and that Brahman is our real nature as Atman, then how can there be said to be any agent that has freedom of action, given Brahman is said to be beyond all things like action? Doesn't this imply freedom of action is therefore simply an illusion on a relative level for the apparent individual jiva or ego, but it isn't true on an absolute level?
Yes. I mean, jiva itself is not absolutely real. But so long as we rise as jiva, that's as ego, we experience ourselves as the doer of action and the experiencer of the fruit of action. As Bhagavan says in verse 38 of Ulladu, if we are the doer of actions, we will have to experience the resulting fruit. But when one knows oneself by investigating who is the doer, doership will depart and all the three karmas will come to an end. So long as we experience ourselves as a jiva, so long as we experience ourselves as I am this person, I am this body, that means that I that experiences itself as I am this body is jiva. As real as this jiva, so real is karma, so real is freedom of will and action. So real is when we misuse our freedom of will and action, we accumulate fruit. The fruit gets stored in sanchita, is then allotted as prarabdha. So the prarabdha, what is predetermined, is the fruit of what our misuse of our freedom of will and action. If we had no freedom of will and action, there would be no law of karma, because it would be meaningless if we didn't act according to our own freedom of will and action. Why should we experience the resulting fruit? It would be a very unjust system if someone is forced to do something and then penalized for what they're forced to do. They're not a free agent. So free agency is implicit in the law of karma. Of course, none of this is ultimately true. What is ultimately true is only I am. Nothing else is true. But so long as we experience ourselves as I am this body, everything else seems to be true. This world seems to be true. The mind seems to be true. The body seems to be true. The karma, the freedom of will and action and the resulting destiny all seem to be true. They're all on the same level of reality. They are what is called Vivaharika Satya. And Vivaharika Satya means transactional reality. And transactional reality is Pratibhasaka Satya. That is seeming reality. None of it is real. None of it is real at all. But it all seems to be real, so long as we rise as ego. So we can't, so long as we experience ourselves as I am this body, I am this person, we cannot, and yes, ultimately, all karma, all freedom of will and action, all is ultimately illusory, but it's no more illusory than the I that is aware of itself as I am this body. So get rid of that I, then you get rid of everything. But so long as that I remains experiencing itself as I am this body, then all these things are equally real.
The next question. In the past 2 years, Tiruvannamalai has been attracting an ever-growing crowd, and with each passing day, it feels less like the calm and peaceful place it once was. Along with this, I noticed that many who have only recently heard about Bhagwan begin quoting him or narrating exaggerated stories in his name. Having been with this Ramana Maharshi UK Foundation for the past 8 years and relying only on what Bhagwan himself has written, I can clearly see that much misinformation is being propagated under his name. This leaves me with a question. Bhagwan himself did not interfere when misleading or false accounts were published during his time. And today we see blatant inaccuracies being spread as his teachings. Do you feel it is best to remain non-interfering, as Bhagwan himself did? Or should we sometimes step in to clarify these distortions when we come across them? The truth is, most of these people are actually not interested in the raw teachings of Bhagwan.
Yeah. Sometimes it may be appropriate to point out inaccuracies, but we don't have a mission to, that is the misinformation has been around since time immemorial. There have been misinformation of so many types. It has always been there, and it always will be there. And spiritual teachings are often, in the course of time, they get mixed up with misinformation. In the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna begins by saying, I taught this originally to the sun god, and he taught it to the Raja rishis. He says, he talks about the succession of it was taught by so and so to so and so, so and so. But over the course of time, it got lost or it got diluted. So I have come again to I will tell you this secret that I taught in those ancient times. I will tell you, Arjuna, because you're dear to me, because you're my friend and devotee. So these spiritual teachings will always be, that is, there'll always be people who misunderstand. The majority will misunderstand. The deeper the truth, the more susceptible it is to being misunderstood. So misunderstandings often, inevitably, they will. But fortunately for us, Bhagavan has written his teachings. He himself has written it. So however much misinformation there is, those who are serious can always go back to the original, to Bhagavan's own words he himself has written. And so we will always have access to Bhagavan's actual words. We are fortunate because so many in the past, what Buddha taught, it was an oral tradition for several hundred years before people started writing it down. What Jesus Christ taught, he didn't write anything. It was many years after his death, people started writing things, and they based it on hearsay or so. All these things inevitably get distorted over time, but we are very fortunate that just like we have we have Krishna's teachings in the form of Bhagavad Gita. It wasn't written by Krishna himself, but at least we can take it as a reliable source of Krishna's teachings, because it was written by, it was dictated by Vyasa and written by Ganapati, so it has that, we know it comes from reliable sources. Bhagavan's teachings, we've got his own writings. And we've also got what Murugan has recorded in Guru Vasudha. So most importantly, Bhagavan's own original writings. So we can always return to a source and get what Bhagavan actually taught. But inevitably, things will be misinterpreted. And we live in the age of this internet used to be called the information superhighway, but it's now become the misinformation superhighway. There's far more misinformation than there is information. And we need to use our judgment to separate what is reliable from what is unreliable. So, but most people aren't much bothered. They like some nice saying, it's been attributed to Buddha or to Krishna or to Ramana. Whether it's actually been said by them, they're not concerned. It's a nice saying, they quote it, and someone else hears it and they understand it in their own way, and they quote it in their own way, and it gets distorted over time. This is inevitable, but if under certain circumstances, when things are drawn to, misinformation is drawn to our attention, it's sometimes appropriate to point it out. No, this is not correct. But it's not our mission. We don't have a mission to go and rectify these things, because the misinformation will always be there. So we should focus more on what Bhagavan actually said, rather than trying to correct the things that are wrongly attributed to him. If we focus on what he actually said, those who are ready for it will find it and will take it. Those who are not ready for it, they'll be satisfied with the misinformation.
The next question is from Sanjay Lohia. Sanjay?
Yes, please. Yes. So, sir, in this verse 26 of Akshara Manmalai, Bhagavan says, Arunachala, great hill of grace, praised by Gautama, casting a benevolent side look, take charge of me.
Yes.
What is this benevolent side look?
It's that is, Bhagavan often talks about the look of grace, and in devotional literature, this often talks about the look of grace. That is the mere God's looking at us is his grace. So even a side glance is sufficient to save us. So Kani Kanita means that side glance. Give me at least a side glance of your grace.
Side glance, sir, it could be one more meaning is, I am not sure, that the grace is not apparent, but it is coming to us secretly, something like that. I don't know.
We can also take it in that way. Bhagavan also talks about that, about unknown to anyone.
Yeah, unknown to anyone.
You have, so yes, that is, no one can give a defined meaning for any verse of Aksharamalai. That is why when Murugan began to write his commentary, there were some verses that give room for different meanings. And when Murugan asked Bhagavan, Bhagavan said, He who wrote it has gone away. If you want me to give a meaning, I have to break my head to work out what the meaning is. You may as well break your head to work out the meaning. But why Bhagavan said that? Because if Bhagavan said it means this, then that invalidates all other possible interpretations. But it's not intended to have just one meaning. In different states of mind, different verse, the same verse will different meanings from the same verse will strike us. So these are meant to have multiple. There's room for multiple interpretations. When we deal with works like Ulladu, we can say, no, this is definitely what Bhagavan intended is this meaning. But nobody can say about Aksharamlai, but any one meaning is what Bhagavan intended. He intended it to be, to touch our heart. And how it touches our heart, one day it may touch our heart in one way, another way it may touch our heart in another way. So there's no defined meaning for any of the verses of Aksharamlai. Some of them we can more or less say, okay, this is the only meaning, but many of them have room for multiple interpretations.
You have done your translations and the articles only up till verse 21.
Yes.
Verse 21, you have posted, sir.
Yes.
Video, I think the videos and the articles. So, like, when do you propose to start again, sir? This.
Well, I was doing my translation of Aruṇācala Ashtakam, but while doing it, I wanted to, after completing the translation, I began to write an introduction. And the introduction became so detailed, I thought, no, it's meaningless to put all this in the introduction. So I started writing it as an explanation for each verse. So I've written explanation for 3 verses, and I'm going to post that online, hopefully in the next week or so, definitely before the next meeting, Bhagavan willing. And then I will complete writing the explanations of the other verses. Then I'm going to do Pancharatnam. Then Ekatma Panchayam I haven't yet done. I'll do that. I'll do Upadesha Tanipakal. And finally, I'll do Aksharamlai. Aksharamlai, why I keep it for the end is it's the Aksharamlai is the crest jewel of Bhagavan's teaching, the ultimate. So, I mean, I even fear to do Aksharamlai because who am I to do justice to Aksharamlai? Obviously, I cannot do justice to it, but it's such a deep work, and it gives room to be interpreted in so many ways. So what I'll do after I finish these other translations, I'll do just a translation of all the verses of Aksharamlai, make that available, and then hopefully I'll start writing the more detailed explanations again.
Yes, sir. So, like that will be a good idea, sir. If you can give us an explanatory paraphrase of each of them, a detailed explanatory paraphrase. That itself, in the beginning, you can start with that, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
That will be a good idea, sir.
Yes. That's
and you can
if
start
Bhagavan willing. Bhagavan willing.
Everything is Bhagavan willing only, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Without his will, not even an atom can move.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next question. I have been focusing on and walking on the path of Bhagavan, but the rejections and dejections of the world are immense, to the extent that I pray that, O Bhagavan, if I can't walk on your path, it's better to give up my body. My family and relatives are completely against the spiritual path and drag me to late nights and a party culture, which I completely cannot do. I am praying day and night to Aruṇācala, but I don't know what would happen. Should I quietly accept my situation as my prarabdha and continue with what they want, or strongly put my foot down? My challenge is that my spouse doesn't believe in spirituality.
Yes, we all, well, most of us face difficulties in one form or another. The world will always try to pull us outwards, but Bhagavan's path is an inward path. So sometimes we have to, as Bhagavan says in Ulladu Bandham, he translated some verses from Yoga Vashista. And the gist of those verses is Vashista is teaching Rama, you have known all that is to be known. Now play your part in the world. Ulahil Vilayatu Vira. Oh, hero, play your role in the world, as if having desire, as if having rising of mind. So Bhagavan's path is inward. Inwardly, we need to be trying to subside, but outwardly, we need to play the role in life. So sometimes we have to act as if we have desire, as if we have. So how you should behave according to your circumstances. Well, as Bhagavan made clear in the note to his mother, you will be made to do whatever is necessary in accordance with prarabdha. That is, in order to experience our prarabdha, certain actions are necessary on our part. He will make us do those actions. Other things, if you're drawn to them, let them, it's mind and body that are involved in all these things. Keep yourself aloof from these things. Don't identify yourself with the mind. If you find yourself in a party, who is in the party? It's the person you take yourself to be in the party. Separate yourself from that person by holding on to I in the heart. It's not easy because of our strong Vishaya vasanas. So sometimes it's necessary to withdraw ourselves from external circumstances that are kindling our vasanas too strongly. But how we should do it very much depends upon the circumstances. Bhagavan will guide you. It's difficult when we have a spouse, a husband or wife or a partner or whatever, who is not attuned to the spiritual path we're on. But that is also destiny that we are in such a situation. So don't worry too much about these things. Focus on trying to turn your mind within. You can turn your mind within without anyone knowing. This is a very... The beautiful thing about Bhagavan's path, it's not certain paths there's a lot of outward action. But Bhagavan's path, no outward action is necessary. It's the inward turning of the attention is the essence of Bhagavan's path. Of course, we can express our love outwardly. If we're in Tiruvannamalai, we can go to Bhagavan's shrine, go around Bhagavan's shrine, we can walk around Aruṇācala, all these. There are many ways we can express our devotion outwardly, but it's not essential. But the essential thing is turning our attention within. So whatever our external circumstances may be, we are always free to turn our attention within. So if the external circumstances are not conducive, keep your spiritual practice, keep it to yourself. Go within. Nobody need know about it.
Michael, we've just had the Kumbhabhishekam at the ashram.
Yes, I saw something about that.
And of course it took place, I think, in 1949.
Yeah.
Bhagavan was present.
Yes.
Had he spoken much about incorporating what came about as a temple in terms of his teachings? Had he specifically spoken along those lines, really?
Not that I'm aware of at all. But Bhagavan gave teachings that were appropriate to individuals. So some individuals may say that Bhagavan has given them some individual. I mean, Bhagavan may sometimes say things that are appropriate to a particular individual, but generally there's no mention in Bhagavan's teachings about the temple that was built on his mother's shrine. It wasn't Bhagavan's desire to build that temple, it was his brother's desire. And others also had a desire because they wanted to do their, installing this Sri Chakra and everything. That has nothing to do with Bhagavan's teachings. But people did it. Bhagavan lets people do whatever they want to do because different ways are appropriate for different people. But it's not really, it's got nothing to do with Bhagavan's core teachings. But if we want to follow Bhagavan's outward example, there's the devotion. Bhagavan clearly exemplified devotion to Aruṇācala. Bhagavan went round the hill. Bhagavan sang Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam. So that is very, very clear, but no mention at all about in any of Bhagavan's original writings or even in the recordings of what Bhagavan said. There's almost nothing about Matrabhuteshwara or Sri Chakra or anything. So these were what other people wanted to do. But as far as I can see, it's got nothing to do with Bhagavan's teachings. Even this Veda Parayana, it was only in later days, in the early days, the Tamil Parayana, from when they were living in Virupaksha cave, there was a Tamil Parayana going on. Even before Bhagavan composed Aksharamala, they used to sing songs from Devaram, Tirvasakam, Tirbahal, and so on. I mean, all these devotional songs, and even from Yalwas and such things. These devotional singing was there in Bhagavan present. And of course, when Bhagavan composed Aksharamala and the other hymns, these also were sung. And then later, after they came down to the foot of the hill, Bhagavan composed Upadeshundya, Atma-vichara, Ulladu. These were also added. But only much later, sometime in the 1930s, this Veda Parayana started, which really has nothing to do with Bhagavan's teachings, but that is the priest told Chinnaswami, if you have a temple, then you need to have all this Veda recitation. That's how it started. So it's fine for people who want it, but it's not really Bhagavan's way, as far as I can see.
Please do ask your question, Vasanta.
The question is my question is, did Bhagavan ever encourage doing japa of Arunachala Shiva mantra to help turn within, Michael?
Again, I don't think Bhagavan did explicitly, but we can certainly take that as implicit. I don't know whether you were here when I spoke about the second verse of Arunachala Navamani Malai. There, Bhagavan has clearly given mantra diksha of the mantra Arunachala. Because the custom is when giving mantra diksha, a guru will explain the meaning of each syllable or group of syllables and explain the fruit of the mantra. Bhagavan has done that in the second verse of Arunachala Navamani Malai.
Oh, really? I didn't
So
know.
we can take that as a public. For those who want, and Bhagavan said no initiation is necessary, but those who want to take initiation, Bhagavan has given us all initiation into the name Arunachala.
Arunachala. You know that famous mantra, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, that one.
I was just going to say that Bhagavan himself, that is the refrain, the pallavi for Aksharamala. After every verse of Aksharamala, we can sing that. So that Bhagavan himself has sung that. So by example, yes, Bhagavan has taught. So those who want to take that as for japa, certainly there's, I mean, it's a lot of things Bhagavan taught by implication rather than explicitly.
Yes, yes.
Bhagavan never said, I gave initiation in the name Aruṇācala, but we can understand if we read that second verse of Aruṇācala Navamanimalai, he very, very clearly, he says, what is the meaning of Aruna, each of those syllables?
Yes.
Satya Chitsukham, that is Satchidananda in effect, Satya Chitsukham Andri, Paravuisarayakam, the oneness of the Supreme and the Jiva Brahmaikya, which is the meaning of Tattvamasi. He puts all these there. So that is the meaning of Aruṇācala, of those three syllables, Aruna, and Achala means Ganam, means what is solid, what is immovable. And what is the fruit of that? Mukti Ninekavaral Aruṇācala Munnidavai. This liberation we're merely thought of. So Bhagavan has very, very openly given initiation in the name. He takes Aruṇācala as a mantra, and he's given us all initiation. So if we want to do japa, if we find that is helpful,
yes,
by all means, yes.
Thank you so much.
And Bhagavan, we also have Bhagavan's name.
Huh?
We also have Bhagavan's name. We can repeat Ramana if we find that helpful.
Yes.
Because when he has said Aruṇācala Ramana is that which is blissfully existing as awareness in the hearts, that Paramatma that blissfully exists as awareness in the hearts of all, in the cave of the heart lotus of all jivas, beginning with Hari. He's clearly he's clearly drawing a connection between that name Aruṇācala Ramana and what is shining in our heart. So we can use that as that name can be a great support to us when we try to turn our attention within.
Thank you.
That is, with Bhagavan's teaching, when we read his words, when we read what he's written, we have to understand the meaning, but not only the meaning. There's a huge amount of implication in those words. So we need to understand both the meaning and the implication. What it implies to one person may be different to what it implies to another person. So we need to, that's why meditating on Bhagavan's words, and meditation means thinking about it, doing manana, often having those words going through our mind, then more and more meanings will reveal themselves, more and more implications will reveal themselves to us.
Yes. Thank you very much. You answered the question.
In Stuti Panchakam, Bhagavan has said so much about the efficacy of the thought of Aruṇācala. So
it's an old Tamil saying.
Even if you can do nothing else, if you can think of, if you continue repeating Aruṇācala Shiva, that itself is it's certain. Yes, as you say, Smaranat Aruṇācala.
Smaranat. I said, I've heard that, and I thought, what is that?
No,
it's
part of a Sanskrit sloka. The sloka is Darshana Daprasadasi, Janana Kamalalaye, Kasyantu Marana Mukti, Smaranat Aruṇācalam. That is, Mukti will be attained if you have darshan of Aprasadasi, that's Chidambaram. Or if you're born in Kamalalaya, that's Tiruvaro. If you die in Kashi, or if you merely think of Aruṇācala, may your remembrance of Aruṇācala.
The easiest.
Yes.
How to be born in Tiruvarur.
Yeah, but that's not in our hands.
Yes.
Even if we want to die in Kasi, we may die
Yes.
before we get there, or we may
Don't
be
know.
there
Yes.
and have to leave just, we may be taken seriously ill and taken to hospital in Delhi or
Yes,
somewhere.
yes. It's nothing is in our hands, but
nothing-
thinking is, or meditating
exactly,
on is
exactly,
very much in our hands. Yes.
exactly.
Mm.
But Bhagavan also, I think in talk somewhere, Bhagavan also indicates all these have a deeper meaning.
Mm.
Darshana Daprasadasi, that is a space of consciousness, seeing the space of consciousness. Kamala Laya means the abode of the lotus. That is what is the lotus in our
Kamala.
heart. So being born in the heart. And dying in Kasi, that has the same meaning. That is the death of
Kamala,
ego.
yeah. Fantastic.
And thinking of Aruṇācala is always shining in the heart. So all
Yes.
these things, they have different, they can be under, that not but one meaning invalidates the other meanings.
Mm. And not one
Different
is superior,
layers of
inferior.
meaning are intended.
Mm.
And also there's Bhagavan sometimes used to draw a sketch of Aruṇācala. Or whenever he was given a photo of Aruṇācala, there was a verse that Bhagavan often wrote, that he himself composed the verse. And in Ramana Maharshi, there's before Aruṇācala Stuti Panchakam, there's a picture of Aruṇācala, this one, and underneath it there's a verse that was written by Bhagavan. Karunanavamai Karudakkatinal Aruṇācala Shivamidam. That means this is Aruṇācala Shiva, which, being the ocean of grace, the ocean of Karuna, bestows liberation when thought of. So clearly Bhagavan says.
Yes. I think also, Michael, that we sort of take Bhagavan's word and then that love and devotion develops. I mean, first
Definitely.
make it,
That
fake
is
it and make it, fake it and make it first.
Yeah.
But you take his word for it, and then slowly you find you are drawn.
Exactly.
So that
that
is
is
the
the power of his words. That is
Yes,
the power of his
words.
words. Yeah.
Yes.
Words are not ordinary.
Mm.
There is a question in the chat box to everybody, and then there are a couple of questions, sort of more, which have been sent. Did Bhagwan ever acknowledge karma yoga and hatha yoga?
Karma yoga, yes. But Bhagavan's interpretation of karma yoga is slightly different to how it's usually understood. That is, in Upadesha Undiyā, Bhagavan has talked about all the four yogas. Karma yoga, bhakti yoga, yoga, that is the classical yoga, the yoga of Patanjali, and jnana yoga. He covers all these four in Upadesha Undiyā. That is, his teaching on karma yoga begins in verse 3. He says, in verse 2 he had said that the fruit of action will pass away. That is, when you experience the fruit of any action, that fruit is finished. But what remains is a seed, and that seed is what causes us to fall in the great ocean of action. That seed means the vasana, the inclination to do the same action again and again. That causes us to fall in the great ocean of action. Therefore, vidu tarile, it will not give liberation. Karma will not give liberation. In the Sanskrit version, he says even more strongly, gati nirodhakam, it will obstruct liberation. So karma does not give liberation. But in the third verse, he says, kartano kakam nishkarmiya karma. That is nishkarmiya karma, done for God. Done for God implies done for the love of God. And in fact, in the Malayalam version, he says Ishwara Pritiyanai. That means for the love of God. So the action done for the love of God. In Sanskrit, he says Ishwara Pitam, offered to God. But it all amounts to the same thing. So will purify the mind and gati varikambikam, and show the way to liberation. So what he's indicating there, firstly, he doesn't take the nishkarmiya karma to be a separate path, but a part of the path of bhakti. That's why he doesn't say just nishkarmiya karma. He says nishkarmiya karma done for God. That's very important because any action has a motivation of one sort or another. So most of our actions are driven by our desires. So we want some result. We do something in order to experience some result. So if we are to act without desire, what is going to motivate our action? It's only if your action is motivated by love of God can it be done, at least to some extent, without desire. So nishkarmiya karma without bhakti is not really, it's not really a thing. There's no such thing as nishkarmiya karma without bhakti. So bhakti is implied in nishkarmiya karma. And that action that is done for the love of God will purify the mind. And purifying the mind means clarifying the mind. The impurities in the mind are all the vasanas, all the outward going vasanas, the vishaya vasanas. So when those vishaya vasanas are reduced or they are weakened, then the mind gets a clarity. And in that clarity, we will see what is the path to liberation. That's why he says, Gati Vari Kambikam. It will show the way to liberation. In other words, it will enable us. Kambikam is a causative verb. It will cause us to see the way to liberation. It will make us see the way to liberation. The way to liberation is not doing. Doing cannot give liberation. The way to liberation is being. But that clarity comes as a result of doing nishkarmiya karma. Then in the fourth verse, he says, what are the nishkarmiya karmas we can do? He says, didamidu, this is certain. Puja, japa, and dhyana are respectively actions of body, speech, and mind. And in this order, he puts it very, he says, we have one than one is superior. What he means is, in this order, each one is superior to the previous one. So better than puja is japa, better than japa is dhyana. So these are the nishkarmiya karmas we can do. Bhagavan's implication is, nishkarmiya karma means puja, japa, and dhyana. Because the nishkarmiya karma has to be done for the love of God. Then in verse 5, he gives a very broad definition of puja. By puja, he doesn't just mean ritualistic action. Any worship you do, considering ennuru yavam ireyuru enna, any means considering, thinking. So thinking that all the 8 forms are forms of God. The 8 forms means the 5 elements, that's what constitutes everything, and the sun, moon, and fire, and jiva. So these are called the 8 forms, the Ashtamurti. So considering that everything is of the 8 forms, all the 8 forms are forms of God. In other words, considering that everything is a form of God, worshipping accordingly is good worship of God. So you worship, that's why I say you need not be just ritualistic worship. For example, if you see a hungry person and you give food to them, not with the feeling, oh, I'm superior to this person, so I give them food. No, God has come to me in the form of this hungry person. So this hungry person is giving me the opportunity to serve God in that form. So we need to be very, very humble and do the service accordingly. Or we can, if we see the harm that is being done nowadays to the environment because of human activities, how we're undergoing climate change and so much damage is being done to the environment. If we're considering it all to be God, we won't want to do harm to do it. So we'll try to live an eco-friendly life. If you do live an eco-friendly life with the attitude that all these multiple forms are all forms of God, that also is a good puja of God. So we can do, Bhagavan has given us a very broad definition of puja. anything that we do, considering that it's God, any service we do, any good action we do, considering that we're doing it for God, that is good worship of God. Then japa, in the next 6th verse, he talks about the different forms of japa. So he says, better than stotras, better than singing hymns aloud, better is to recite is japa. Better than japa done aloud is japa faintly whispered within the mouth. Better than japa faintly whispered within the mouth, japa done mentally is good. Better than, and that japa done mentally, that is a form of dhyana. So he grades the different types of japa also. When he's grading them, he's showing which is superior. When he says superior, he means which is more efficacious in purifying the mind. So anything we do by body, it's relatively gross. Things we do by speech are more subtle. Things we do by mind are still more subtle. So more subtle and more efficacious in purifying the mind. Because you can be doing puja and your mind can be wandering, you can be worrying about all your worldly problems and everything while doing the puja. So though your body is doing the puja, your mind is wandering elsewhere. So it's the mind that is most important. It's the mind that has to be purified. So better than the physical actions, the vocal actions, better than the vocal actions, the mental actions. Then in verse 7, he talks about puja, about dhyana, about meditation. Rather than interrupted meditation, I'm not giving the exact meaning, but the implied meaning. Rather than interrupted meditation, the uninterrupted meditation, like the water in the stream or like the flow of ghee, is best. Why does he say that? Because if we sit down to meditate on God, and we start thinking about other things, that means we're more interested in those other things than we are in thinking about God. So if our meditation is uninterrupted, if we have an uninterrupted flow of thought about God, that shows the intensity of our love of God. That's why he said the uninterrupted meditation is better than uninterrupted meditation. So from verse 3 to verse 8, he's talking about karma yoga, the path of action, nishkarmiya karma. But he makes clear that the preliminary stages of the path of bhakti are karma yoga. We're doing these actions for God. We're offering to God. Ishwarapitam. Kartanukakam. We're doing it for God. So in the early stages, karma yoga is a part of the path of bhakti. But the path of bhakti doesn't stop with just puja, japa, and dhyana. The path of bhakti goes much deeper than that. That is what he talks about in verses 8 and 9. In verse 8, he says, rather than anya bhava. Anya means what is other. Bhava in that context means meditation. So rather than meditating on what is other, that implies, rather than meditating on God as, in the context it implies, rather than meditating upon God as if he's something other, in other words, meditating upon a name and form of God. If we meditate on any name and form of God, Aruṇācala or Bhagavan Ramana or Krishna or Rama or Jesus, any name or form, that is anya bhava, because we're taking God to be something other than ourselves. We're seeing him as something other than ourselves. So rather than that, the ananya bhava, the meditation in which we don't see him as other than ourselves, and he clarifies what he means by ananya bhava. He says, avanahamahum ananya bhava. That is the ananya bhava in which he is I. So when we recognize that God is what is shining in our heart as I, and therefore meditate on nothing other than I, that is anaitinamutun, that is best of all. That means when he says best of all, that's the best of all practices of meditation, we can take it. That's one way. It's best of all practices of bhakti. Rather than meditating on God as something other than ourselves, meditating upon him as ourselves is a better form of bhakti. It also means it's the best among all the means to purify the mind. because but you need to see the connection going. So all this connects back to verse 3, where he talks about purifying the mind. But verse 3 to 8, the mind is being purified by actions. And not just by the action, by the love with which the action is done. It's the love that is purifying. It's not the action itself that purifies the mind, it's the love with which it's done that purifies the mind. That's why he says, Kartana karkum nishkarmiya karma. Nishkarmiya karma done for God. So that love purifies the mind. But better than any action is to meditate on I. The implication is meditating on I is not an action. He makes that clear in the next verse, but I'll come to that in a minute. So he says that meditating on nothing other than I is best of all. Meditating on nothing other than I means Atma-vichara. So what he calls there Ananya Bhava is he's just describing Atma-vichara in other terms. Meditating on nothing other than oneself means what? Meditating on oneself alone. So meditating on nothing other than I, that is Atma-vichara. So what is the result of this Atma-vichara? That he makes clear in verse 9. He says, Bhava balatinal bhavana tita sa bhava terutale tele undipara parabhakti tattvam undipara. Bhava balatinal means by the strength of meditation. By the strength of what meditation? In the context, if we are following the continuity of ideas, he's talking about the strength of the Ananya Bhava. In other words, the strength of self-attentiveness. By the strength of that self-attentiveness, Satbhavatu Iratale, being in Satbhava. Satbhava means the state of being. And he describes that state of being as bhavanatita, which is beyond or which transcends bhavana. Bhavana in this context implies, bhavana means meditation, but it implies meditation in the form of mental activity. Because if we attend to anything other than ourselves, that is a mental activity. If you're meditating on the form of Aruṇācala, or the form of Bhagavan, or the form of Krishna or Rama or whoever, that is a mental activity. Whereas if you meditate on yourself alone, that is not a mental activity. That is a cessation of mental activity. Because as Bhagavan has made clear, to the extent to which we attend to ourselves, we as ego subside. So when the doer subsides, the doing subsides along with it, the action subsides along with it. So that's why he said, by the strength of that meditation, being in Satbhava, being in the state of being, in other words, being as we actually are, as a result of the intensity of self-attentiveness. So by being self-attentive, we subside and remain in the state of being. And being in that state of being, that alone is parabhakti tattva. That alone is the nature of supreme devotion. So the pinnacle of devotion is not doing anything, but just being as we actually are. So there Bhagavan has indicated also, in verse 3 he said, it will purify the mind and show the way to liberation. What is the way to liberation? It is attending to ourselves and thereby subsiding and being as we actually are. So beautifully Bhagavan has connected all these things together. So if we understand the underlying ideas there, it's such a rich, rich idea Bhagavan is teaching us there. So Bhagavan has shown, he has talked about karma yoga, yes, but he's shown karma yoga is the preliminary stages of the path of bhakti, where we're expressing our love for God in the form of actions of the body, which are called puja, actions of the speech, which are called japa, and actions of the mind, which are called dhyana. But we then progress beyond this doing to just being. And how we transition from doing to being is by self-attentiveness. And then in verse 10, he summarizes it all. Being, having subsided in the place from which we rose, That is karma and bhakti, that is yoga and jnana. Then in the next 5 verses, he talks about yoga. He talks about the distinguishing practice, that is, Patanjali, the path of yoga as described by Patanjali in his Patanjali Sutra is called Ashtanga Yoga, the eight-limbed yoga. What distinguishes yoga from all the other types of practice is one of those 8 limbs, which is pranayama. Because all the other ones, they're more or less implicit in the other paths, like it's all the dharana and dhyana and so on. All these are there in bhakti, they're also there in jnana. So what distinguishes yoga is the practice of pranayama. So he then talks about why this practice of pranayama is efficacious. Because the mind and the breath, they both share a common root. They're 2 branches with a common moolam, a common root. So if you restrain the breath, if you calm down the breath, the mind will calm down. If you calm down the mind, the breath will calm down. So pranayama is a means to calm the mind, to control, to reduce the outward going activity of the mind. And then after describing that, he says, but the subsidence of mind is of 2 kinds. It's laya and nasa. This is verse 13. That which is subsided in laya will rise again. That which is subsided in nasa will not rise again. So why he makes that distinction there, as he explained in the 8th paragraph of Nana, pranayama, it's a means to curb the mind, to reduce the activity of the mind, to bring about the subsidence of mind, but it does not bring about manonasa. So pranayama by itself is insufficient. So how can we use that calmness of mind brought about by pranayama to bring about the manonasa? That is what he makes clear in verse 14. But he says that mind which subsides that is restrained by restraining the breath, only if that mind is sent on the or-vari will its form die. The or-vari, it can be interpreted in 2 ways. Or is a verb, but means to know or investigate. Or is also a form of oru, which means one. So or-vari, we can take it to mean the path of investigation or the one path. Whichever way we take it, it amounts to the same thing, because there's only one path but will bring about the destruction of mind, and that is the path of investigation. In other words, the path of self-investigation. So only if a mind is sent on that path of self-investigation will its form die. So again, he shows, just like he showed how karma and bhakti lead to the path of jnana, the path of vichara, he shows the same about yoga. And then in verse 15, he said, for that great yogi who has attained his real nature, there's nothing remains to be done. And then from verse 16, he talks about the core teaching, which is the Atma-vichara. So yes, Bhagavan has talked about karma yoga in the sense of nishkarmiya karma, but nishkarmiya karma offered to God, because he doesn't take it as a separate path from the path of bhakti. Regarding hatha yoga, no, Bhagavan hasn't said anything. He has said a little bit about pranayama, which is also part of hatha yoga, but hatha yoga is different from Ashtanga yoga. Hatha yoga takes 2 aspects of Ashtanga yoga, the asana and the pranayama, and it builds a whole thing of its own about it. So that's much more to do with the physical thing. It's also connected with controlling the mind, but it's a very a very roundabout way of going things. So Bhagavan generally didn't talk about Hatha Yoga. Hatha means what is very stubborn. So people who are very stubborn, who want to control everything, they do this Hatha Yoga, but it's not really necessary for, it's not such a deep path.
The next question, Michael. Could you please speak about the challenge of being in a sort of limbo once we start self-investigation and begin letting go more of ego's maya, but are not yet fully surrendered? So therefore, we don't have the clarity and peace of Satchit Anand yet. In other words, having little interest in this ego world, but not yet having the clarity and peace of enlightenment, leaves me feeling between worlds, which I find very challenging.
Bhagavan talks about the same thing in, so many places he refers to it, but in this verse 8 of Aruṇācala Padigam, I'll just read the meaning. Destroying in me the inclination to know the way by which to live in the world. That means to live means to subsist or survive in this world. You've kept me as worthless. That means I'm unfit for this world. You've made me unfit for the world. But the implication is I'm still not, though you've made me unfit for the world, I myself know I'm unfit for the spiritual path, so I'm unfit for anything. That's the implication. If you keep me in this condition, it will not be happiness for anyone, only misery. Dying indeed is better than this life. So Bhagavan is exactly describing the state of mind you're talking about here. So, and then he says his condition, he talks more about his condition. To me, who, despite being possessed by madness, implying the madness of love for you, and bereft of fruit, that is the fruit of such madness, namely dissolving forever in you, the infinite space of jnana, graciously give the rare medicine by which to attain your feet supreme, who have taken the form of Aruna Hill, which shines on earth as the medicine for madness. So this is a predicament all spiritual aspirants feel themselves to be in. We are no longer fit for the world, and we're also totally unfit for the spiritual path. We are, as you say, in a limbo. We're neither this nor that. The only way out of this is trying our best to follow the path that Bhagavan has shown us. We will continue feeling in a limbo until the final moment when he swallows us entirely. So this state of mind, we will all feel in this. None of us, if we're honest with us, can call ourselves a true spiritual aspirant. We would like to be a spiritual aspirant. We're trying to be a spiritual aspirant. We're trying to surrender ourselves. We're trying to practice this vichara, and we're all pretty hopeless at it. If we're honest with ourselves, we have to admit we're pretty hopeless at it. So we are not fit for this spiritual path. We are also no longer fit for the world. The world no longer has that. It no longer attracts us as it did before. So we are stuck between this and that. So as Bhagavan says, dying indeed is better than this life. He says, Bhavidil Savade Mambam. Bhavidil means than this life, no, than life. It implies than this, such a life. Savade, death alone, not death, dying. Dying is better, is mambu. So Bhagavan knows this. Bhagavan knows our condition better than we know it ourselves. He's very well aware of it. That's why he sang these verses for our benefit. So we're in this limbo. We can't go back to the world. The world will never attract us as it attracted us in the past. So there's only one way to go. We have to go forward on this spiritual path. We have to, as Bhagavan says in the final verse of Ashtakam, we have to go back the way we came. That's the only way. We will never find. He described beautifully there in the last verse of Ashtakam, like the cloud, like the water evaporated from the ocean, goes as clouds and rains on the hill, and it cannot rest until it returns to the ocean. It'll go down, it'll get caught in a lake, it'll get caught in a reservoir. It may, from there, it may be evaporated again and go round again, and it has no rest until it reaches the ocean. Likewise, the soul that has risen from you means from Aruṇācala, cannot find rest until it returns to you. So just like the bird flying in the sky cannot find any rest so long as it's in the sky, it has to go back the way it came. Likewise, we have to go back the way we came. And when we go back the way we came, we will merge in Aruṇācala. So there's only one way for us to go. That is to go back the way we came. We can't. We can no longer. The world no longer has its. It's lost its magic. We've seen the world for what it is. It's always going to disappoint us. We've been disappointed by this world through so many lives. We no longer trust this world. We know the world is, in spite of however attractive it may seem to be, it's never going to deliver the goods. The world is never going to make us happy. This embodied existence is never going to make us happy. Samsara is never going to make us happy. So since we all are craving for happiness, there's only one way to go. So however poor we may feel ourselves to be at surrendering ourselves, however poor we may be at investigating ourselves, we just have to keep on trying. And when we find ourselves to be completely hopeless, we just pray to Bhagavan. Bhagavan, give me the love to follow this beautiful path that you've shown me. That's all we can do.
There's one last question from Swami Nirvritananda. Swamiji.
Namaste, Michael.
Namaskaram.
Namaskaram. So my question is, in the 39th verse of Aksharamanamala, Bhagavan says, Gnamalir Keda Naninnurudiya Nadininnuruven Arunachala.
Yes.
The Gnamalir Keda, why does Bhagavan use that word Gnamalir Keda?
Because generally, it's a cultural thing. There's generally an idea dogs are often considered as unclean animals, because in India we can see dogs will go and if there's some poo, someone has done has gone into a field to do their business, dogs or pigs will come and eat it. So for that reason, dogs are considered as low. But they're also, dogs also used as an example. Bhagavan uses dogs as an example of how the dog will unfailingly find its master by following its scent. Just like that, if we hold on to this eye, which is the scent for Brahman, for the ultimate reality, if we hold on to this eye, it will certainly lead us to that. So a dog can hold on to that scent. I'm even worse than a dog. So how can I, actually, this is actually more the meaning here, because the fact that dogs are considered unclean, Bhagavan was very kind to dogs. There were dogs who were attached to the ashram, even when he was, before there was an ashram, when he was in Virupaksha, there were dogs. there. So Bhagavan didn't look down upon any creature as unclean, but what he's referring to here is the dog will unfailingly find its master. But I'm even worse than a dog, so by what strength will I reach you? So I think that is what the implication there. He's not being derogatory about dogs, as often you get find in Indian literature. Dogs and pigs are generally considered as unclean animals, at least from the very orthodox point of view. But here he's talking about, he's actually saying he's worse than a dog, because a dog at least will hold on to the scent of its master and unfailingly find its master. But I don't even have that ability to hold on to your scent. So by what strength will I seek you and attain you? It's a very, very beautiful verse.
Yeah.
Actually, dogs are allowed to stroll around in Bhagavan's Samadhi hall.
That's very unusual.
Yeah, they go around the Samadhi hall. They go around.
That's very unusual in India, because usually dogs aren't allowed in temples because they're considered unclean. But because Bhagavan, when Bhagavan was there were a lot of Orthodox Brahmins and other Orthodox people who they didn't like the dogs there. They tried to avoid them, but Bhagavan always stood up for the dogs. They have every bit as much right as everyone else. So that's a very beautiful thing in Ramanashram, but the dogs are allowed to freely roam there. And as you say, Swami,
And Jackie has got a Samadhi also.
They come to and go around Bhagavan's Samadhi also, yes. So that's something I love there when I see that. At least that's one tradition of Bhagavan, that, I mean, one aspect of the uniqueness of Bhagavan that is well respected in the ashram. That is a very important thing.
And Jackie the dog has got a Samadhi there.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. For Bhagavan, there's no high and no low, because there's a verse in Akramai, Kirme lengum kiloroli maniyen, kirme pase arunacha. The superficial meaning of that is gem of light, who shines above, below, and everywhere, remove my lowness. But the implied meaning is, what he refers to as kir, when I'm in a very low state of mind. Male, a very high state of mind. Whether I'm in a low state of mind or a high state of mind, you're always shining in my heart, so you remove my lowness. So for Bhagavan, there's no high and low, because Ariyati Tarajivara Dahavari Jigohail Arivairami Paramatman Aruṇācala Ramanan. That is, Aruṇācala Ramana is the Paramatma that blissfully exists as awareness in the cave of the heart lotus of different jivas, beginning with Hari, all different jivas. So from the greatest God to the most insignificant insect, in the heart of all, that which is shining is Aruṇācala Ramana. So where is high and where is low? The lowness, we feel ourselves to be low because we have identified ourselves with this body. If we give up this false identification, that's what Bhagavan means by kirme pase, destroy my lowness. Our lowness is this identification with this body. That's what we belittle ourselves, we demean ourselves by identifying ourselves as this body. So that is the lowness that Bhagavan prays to be removed.
I have a question, sir.
Yes.
In conscious immortality, Bhagavan says that others are not responsible for what happens to us. They are only instruments of what would have happened anyhow. And to his mother, Bhagavan wrote that what has to happen will happen. It cannot be prevented. And what cannot happen will not happen. So can you please enlighten me on both this, sir?
Yes, that is, as he says in verse 38 of Uludunapadu, Vine mudal namayin, vile payan tuipom. If we are a doer of action, we will experience the resulting fruit. That means the implication of that is whatever we experience is the fruit of actions that we've done in the past. So blaming others for our present circumstances, or blaming others for what wrongs happen to us, or what hardships we undergo, is foolish, because we failing to recognize that whatever we're experiencing is the fruit of our past karmas. So nobody is responsible for anything that happens to us. We alone are responsible for all whatever bad things may happen to us. It's all entirely our responsibility, because it's the fruit of our past actions. We cannot experience anything that is not part of prarabdha. And prarabdha is the fruit of our past actions.
To Devaraja Mudaliar, Bhagavan says, Devaraja Mudaliar asks him, even this fan, movement of this fan, is it predetermined? And Bhagavan says that is also everything is predetermined.
Yes, but the thing is, Bhagavan spoke in a very nuanced way. And that is one thing Devaraja Mudaliar himself admitted, but he never was able to understand what Bhagavan. He once said to Sadhu Om, I could never understand why Bhagavan says everything is predetermined, but at the same time he says we have freedom of will and action. It seems to me, we have Icha Kriya Swatantra, it seems to me that it's a contradiction. So Sadhu Om explained to him, and he said, yes, that's just what Bhagavan explained to me. Every time Bhagavan explained to me, it's clear to me. But then again, I get confused. Again, I lose that clarity. So Devaraja Mudaliar, he's not the best person to record these things, because he himself admitted that he had difficulty understanding. Devaraja Mudaliar was a very, very, very nice devotee, very plain-hearted, very simple. So he recorded, when he recorded what Bhagavan said, he recorded it to the best of his ability, according to what he understood. And we find many very nice things recorded, many nice teachings of Bhagavan recorded in day by day. But certain subtle things he wasn't able, he had difficulty grasping. And though
Bhagavan,
he asked Bhagavan many times, Bhagavan explained to him many times, and every time it was, when Bhagavan explained it, it's clear. Then again it would become unclear to him. That's why when he said, it must have been in the late 50s or 60s when he said to Sadhu Om, I could never understand, though Bhagavan explained to me so many times, I could never understand why he says everything is predetermined, but he also says we have Icha Kriya Swatantra. Then Sadhu Om explained to him, and he said, yes, that's exactly what Bhagavan said. And it's clear to me when you say it, but again, I'm going to forget it.
But Bhagavan is said to have said the only freedom that we have is the freedom to turn within into the self.
Right, okay, but even that is not exactly what Bhagavan said. The only correct use of our freedom is to turn within. But if we have the freedom to turn within, we also have the freedom to turn outwards. And when we have the freedom to turn outwards, we have the freedom to attend to this or to attend to that. That is, as Bhagavan explained in the 10th paragraph of Nana, he begins by saying, though the vasanas which come from Tondu Totu Varakindra Vishaya Vasanegal, they come from time immemorial, though they rise in countless numbers like ocean waves. That is, they're always, our mind is nothing but the boiling up of all the Vishaya Vasanas. Bhagavan said, in that context, he says, they will all be destroyed as the Swarupa Dhyana, the self-attentiveness, becomes more and more intense as it increases and increases. So when he says Vishaya Vasanas are rising countless numbers, and when he says elsewhere, But when the mind comes out, it wanders under the sway of its Vishaya vasanas, as he says in the 8th paragraph. That means the mind is always wandering under the sway of vasana, but so many vasanas are rising, and the vasanas are pulling us in different directions. Often we feel inner conflict. We want to do one thing, but we feel, no, that's not the right thing to do. It's better to do this. So we're torn between, shall I do this or shall I do that? We have the freedom to be swayed by this vasana or that vasana. That is that freedom we have. So it's not entirely true to say the only freedom we have is to turn within. We have the freedom to turn out, and when we turn out, we have the freedom to be swayed by, to choose which vasana we're swayed by. That's what Bhagavan called the Ichva Swatantra, the freedom of will, the freedom of liking. But the only correct use of our free will is our freedom of will is to turn within.
Thank you.
So that is, Bhagavan's teachings are very deep and very subtle. So often when people recorded what Bhagavan said, they missed the nuances. So it comes across slightly differently to how Bhagavan intended it. That's why it's so important, Bhagavan's own original words. Because in the case of where Bhagavan has written his teachings, in that note he wrote to his mother, in Nana, in Ulajuna Upadeshundya Arunachal Stuti Panchakam, there we have Bhagavan's own words written by himself. So we can pay close attention and we can recognize the nuances.
He also quotes from the Bhagavad Gita that the work that should be done in this birth would be done anyhow, whether you like it or not.
Exactly. That's what he says in the 13th paragraph of Nana. All these karyas, since that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, in that context, karyas means everything that is meant to happen, everything that ought to happen. So that includes what we are meant to do, what we ought to do, he will make us do. The trouble is, we don't stop with that. In addition to what he makes us do, we are making ourselves do things because our own will is also driving our action. Our will can never overcome his will. So if he wants us to do something, if we need to do something in accordance with our prarabdha, we'll be made to do it. But that doesn't stop us wanting to do other things and trying to do other things.
Thank you.
This is the last question I have, and I think it's been a long day for you. So let's now, this should really be, sort of wrap it up with this one. On worldly enjoyments, could you talk on Bhagavan's teachings on bhog vasanas, that is, non-binding enjoyments of the world? What kind of worldly enjoyments fall under this, and which wouldn't? That is, which ones would be considered binding vasanas?
Well, all vasanas are a problem. Well, yeah, all Vishaya vasanas are a problem. Because happiness does not lie in, Bhagavan says very clearly in the 14th paragraph of Nana, there's no happiness at all in any of the things of the world. Sukham embadu anma-bin sarupamai. Happiness, what is called happiness, is the very nature of oneself. Sukhamum atma-sarupamum verandru. Happiness and our real nature, our own swarupa, atma-swarupa, are not different. Atma-sukham andre uladu. The happiness that is oneself alone exists. Aduve satyam, that alone is real. And then in the next sentence he says, Prapanja porul ondrilavadu sukham kideadu. Happiness is not to be cannot be attained from any any prapanja vishaya, any prapanja porul, any object of the world cannot give us happiness. So we seem to get that because we have desire for things. When we get what we desire, we feel a little satisfaction, a little happiness. So seeking happiness in anything other than ourselves is foolishness. So people say, oh, it's harmless enjoying a good meal. It's harmless. Nothing is harmless. That is, our mind going outward is the cause of all problems. But inevitably, when our mind goes outwards, we all enjoy a good meal. We all enjoy we enjoy being in the company of fellow devotees, or we enjoy, there's so many things that give us fleeting pleasures in this world. That's just, we can't say it's harmless, but it's inevitable. So long as we rise as ego and go outwards, we will, some things will cause us pain, some things will cause us pleasure, but none of these things, whatever pleasures we attain, they're all just fleeting pleasures. None of them last, none of them are, and the happiness we experience from those things is happiness that's already within us. So we're not actually getting happiness from those things. The happiness we get because our desire for it is satisfied. So long as we have desire, we have a problem. So, and the root of desire is ego. So the only vasana, ultimately, that is a good vasana is sat vasana, the inclination just to be as we are, the inclination to turn within, thereby surrender ourselves and subside into the heart. That alone, and just to be as we are, that alone is the harmless vasana. All other vasanas, some are definitely more harmful than others, but all ultimately are harmful because they're taking our attention away from ourselves. So the way to overcome all Vishaya vasanas is to stop attending to Vishayas by attending to ourselves. The more we attend to ourselves, the more the Sat vasana is strengthened and the Vishaya vasanas are weakened. That is the only way.
Should we end now, Michael?
Yes, certainly. Om Namo
We can all do the
Bhagavate
mantra
Śrī
together.
Aruṇācala Ramanaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Ramanaya.